Well, hello and welcome to another edition of Health Solutions with Shawn and Janet Needham, where Team Needham discusses everything healthcare. I'm your host, Shawn Needham, along with my wonderful wife, Janet, and we are streaming live from the Moses Lake Professional Pharmacy Podcast Studio. And we are super excited to have Julie Potiker on our podcast today. It says the 3 ways to practice self-compassion, but she says she's going to have to really narrow it down because there's like 40 ways. So as you know, if you guys have followed us for a while, you know that Jan and I talk about how important it is that if you don't take care of yourself, you can't take care of everybody else. So Julie, welcome to our show.
Happy to be here.
And so tell us a little bit about your history and how you got here.
I actually went to a neurologist because I was afraid that I might have a brain issue going on. The wrong words were coming out of my mouth. And after thorough investigation and scans and an interview, he diagnosed me with stress, and he recommended mindfulness-based stress reduction, which I had never heard of. And it's, the gold standard. It's been studied for 40 years. It was created by Jon Kabat-Zinn in 1979 in the pain clinic, for the pain clinic at University of Massachusetts in Worcester. So I took that class. It was a really good intro on-ramp. I was curious enough that I started taking more and more classes. And in 2010, Mindful Self-Compassion was created by Chris Germer and Kristen Neff. I took it in its pilot year. And then a couple years later, they advertised a teacher training. And because the class was so transformative for me, I decided I wanted to teach it. And I've been teaching it ever since. And since then, taken more trainings, written a few books, that kind of thing.
Awesome. So tell us, you know what, I'm going to really put you on the spot, Julie. Instead of starting out with 3 ways to practice self-compassion, I am going to have you start out with, if there was one thing that somebody could do, what would that be when it comes to practicing self-compassion?
Treat yourself as you would treat a dear friend.
Perfect. Now, Janet, any
you,
comments or questions?
Go ahead.
Oh, go, Julie.
If you want one activity that you could do in the heat of the moment, it's soothing and supportive touch. So that's placing your hands on your body where you find it soothing. You're going to get oxytocin and endorphin to come down from your brain to start calming you down before you then do the next steps.
That's a good one. Okay. Janet, questions, comments?
Well, I'm just going to comment. I need to breathe. I hold my breath. There's a lot of people, I think, that do that. So being conscious of how you're actually breathing sometimes, when you're stressed, can make a huge difference as to how you actually attack or respond or calm yourself, So you kind of mentioned a little bit about some techniques. Let's just talk about, some other physical techniques that you can do besides touching, like you showed, and I talked about breath. Some other things people can do that are really easy and fast.
Sure. I just want to elaborate on the breath thing for a sec, if that's okay, Janet. If you breathe out longer than you breathe in, you will have your heart rate and your blood pressure come down. So if you breathe in for 4 and out for 6, when you're at a traffic light, your body will calm down. So it's not just being conscious of your breathing, it's manipulating your breathing to help your nervous system.
So I have a question on that. So, we're taught of course, I'm sure you're not surprised as you say that. I'm trying that. And I have a question though.
Yeah.
We're taught to calm ourselves down, take deep breaths, but you're telling us that the exhale is more important than the inhale. Is that correct?
I believe you should breathe a full inhale, fill your lungs with air, take a slight pause, and exhale longer than your inhale. That's winner, winner, chicken dinner. And there's all different kinds of breathing. Like if somebody went to breath work and they just Googled it or ChatGPT'd it, they'd find probably, 12 different techniques that do different things for different people. But just the easiest, breathing in for 4 and out for 6, that's going to help.
Okay. So now we've already got 2, so maybe we can get to all 40. I don't know.
If you're feeling activated and you just drop the awareness to the soles of your feet, if you're sitting or if you're walking, and you feel how your feet feel, you can do it right now, both of you sitting in your chair. And you can even, as long as your brain is able to visualize, you can even visualize roots growing from the bottom of your feet through the floor into the soil. That will ground you when you're feeling like you're spinning out on something. If you're walking, you can imagine leaving footprints in the sand while you're walking to your car, or if you're a healthcare worker, while you're walking from exam room to exam room. It's just going to get the spinning out of your head and calm yourself down and put you in the present moment. All these mindfulness and daily life activities that you can do, like while you're cooking, really be cooking. While you're cutting vegetables, don't be thinking of the past and thinking of the future, which we're wired to do as primates. We're always going to be worrying and ruminating because that's how us humans are still alive, looking out for danger and worrying. But to give your body and mind a break, drop into doing what you're doing when you're doing it, which is mindfulness and daily life activities. I do it brushing my teeth at night. I close my eyes for a minute or two, even though I might get toothpaste on my nightshirt, because I'm feeling the toothbrush. I'm hearing the sound of the electric toothbrush. I'm tasting the toothpaste. So I'm getting as many of my senses into the activity of brushing my teeth, as opposed to thinking of that conversation that annoyed me that I just had. So you stop time traveling to the past and the future and just put yourself where you are right now. And these are all tools in a system that I created called S.N.A.P, that starts with the soothing touch, then name the emotion, name it to tame it, then act. What do I need to hear right now? Nobody's chasing you. You're fine. You'll get through this. What do I need to do right now to change the channel? And it's many of these things that we've already talked about. It could be breath work, mindful walking, mindful eating. It could be playing Carole King radio if it's me. It could be moving my body, looking out the window, taking a walk, exercising. It's whatever is on your joy list, which is going to be unique to each of you. Do those things until you feel better. And when you do, enrich it and absorb it so you make a happy bridge in your brain. What wires together fires together. You want to make happy bridges in your brain because the negative ones eventually get pruned out. And then the P is praise. Good job. You used your practice. Or if you're a religious person, it folds right into the gratitude practice, which I know you guys know it has been studied for 60 years and it benefits every area of your life, having a gratitude practice.
Attitude of gratitude.
Yep.
So basically what you're saying, Julie, is in some of these techniques, live in the moment.
Right. And if the moment's bad, because we all have really bad moments, how would you like to use your power to make it a better moment?
Well, I think there's something really strange in our culture that I feel, maybe since we're in healthcare, Shawn and I, that, for so many years we've been telling people, well, you're just depressed. Well, sometimes we should be sad, right? Like if you lost a family member, or if your pet or something, we should feel our emotions. I think that's one thing that I find kind of strange about, the time we're in, is that, we have these emotions for a reason. It's just how we are going to address when it's appropriate, or, how we're going to get through them. Because,
Right.
I mean, sometimes you're not very grateful if you haven't had anything bad that you've endured?
Right. So you're talking about a bunch of different things, Janet, and you're right. You're talking about grief. So I happen to also be a certified grief educator, which happened because I was so afraid I would say the wrong thing when people were suffering loss. I was so afraid I'd say something stupid. So I went through the grief training, which is not to say that I still won't make a mistake and maybe say something less helpful, but at least I'll know where the landmines are, because people say the dumbest things to people who are experiencing grief, and it makes it worse. And they don't mean to. It's just they're uncomfortable in their own skin trying to know what to say. And so they say something like the person's in a better place, or I mean, just terrible things that would never be helpful, right? So you're talking about grief and you're talking about feeling your feelings and depression and anxiety and all the things that don't feel good in our body. And what I'm saying is, even when we're experiencing life events that, of course, make us sad, we can still find moments of joy. Still, in the midst of suffering, at the bedside of a loved one who's at hospice or hospice at home, did the nurse do something that made you feel cared for? Was your morning cup of coffee or tea nourishing? Did you take a walk outside? Like there's a way that you can use your power even in the midst of trauma and suffering, where you can reorient yourself to a wider lens and allow in moments of peace or joy.
Well, and I think one of the things is that it all starts when we wake up in the morning. And, if you think it's going to be a bad day, you're right. It's going to be a bad day. But if
Exactly.
you get up with an attitude of gratitude and you thank God that you have another day to live, and you start with an attitude like that, it's going to be a great day.
Or it'll be a day that goes like this, up and down and up and down and up and down, and you'll be present for it.
Right.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Exactly. And I think the attitude of gratitude, we have to understand that our minds are very powerful, and they are, how we think is how we feel. So, it's how we react to things. I mean, and I think as we get older, it gets a little bit easier. But if you just realize that, you know, most everything, don't sweat the small stuff, and everything's the small
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
Everything's the small stuff. And I mean, just look at some of the stuff that you stress about, and usually 48 hours later, it is not a big deal. And a couple years later, you almost forget about it.
That brings up that all things change, the good things and the bad things, right? So some of this is like lessons in impermanence. These are like what you're talking about is like our existence here on planet Earth. Every emotion that comes up, that arises, that you feel and you acknowledge and that you notice because you're mindful of what these things are. So it helps to have a mindfulness practice, right? Is going to pass, both the good and the bad. And then it's about just sort of being in the stream and floating, or being the stream if you want to get really esoteric about it.
Right. Right. Janet?
So my mind is racing a little bit for
Yes.
thoughts of, sometimes I think it's helpful too to have some intentional goals too, like for yourself. I find many times women will like maybe health issues or, there's different things that they are neglecting in their life, but they need to set some goals and then work towards them. Do you find that being helpful in this arena to maybe it's if after you've achieved the goal, like you said, the self-talk of celebrating that.
Yeah, I mean, I would recommend every human being, no matter what age, to write down a joy list and set a goal to do a couple of those things every day that's on your joy list. And then make sure when you're doing them that you really feel it, that you're enriching it and absorbing it, because you will be creating new neural networks in your brain that are happy. So that when your default mode network is, you're not, so the default mode network can be sort of a bad neighborhood in your brain if you're a negative person. So you can actually rewire that by taking in positive mental states and pushing them to neural traits, making happy bridges in your brain, right? So that when you're not engaged in a task and your mind's just wandering, it's not a bad neighborhood, so that it's a happy neighborhood. So like you're planting seeds of goodness and you're watering them, and then they're growing, and then you're pulling weeds. There's all different kinds of metaphors for this.
That makes total sense. So I want to get more of a health, more specific to health, specifically with diet. You've mentioned mindful a lot today.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I might be way off base. I might be putting you on the spot. But I remember reading a book one time, and it was written by a physician. She was an MD, and she talked about mindful eating.
Sure.
So Jan and I talk about diet and how important it is to your overall health. Mindful eating, do you talk about that at all?
Yeah, I do. I teach it.
Okay, tell me.
So mindful eating. So remember, like a few minutes ago in the interview where you said something about being present or being in the moment. So that's applied to eating. So you sit down at your meal and you can take it all the way back to looking at your food and kind of imagining the journey it took from being in the earth to being picked by people, to being packaged or driven, to going to the market, however it was that you got it, to then being prepared, to then being on your plate. So that takes a few minutes of contemplation. And then you take a bite and you really savor the feeling of it. So you're not actually chit-chatting during this with another human. You're silent for however many minutes as you want to be silent, so that you can go through the exercise of the gratitude for that food. And you'll find that the food in your mouth will taste way more powerful. Like your taste buds will just be like, wow, when you do a mindful eating exercise, or even when the two of you sit down at dinner, if you just take 3 minutes and you're just sitting across from each other doing your own things in your own heads, and then you look up and, wink at each other or whatever when it's time to have a conversation, and see, how was that? That's mindful eating. So when you're on mindfulness retreats, you don't talk to each other at meals. So you're sitting at a table with all these strangers and everybody's doing their own thing, and there is no speaking for the whole time.
Yeah, wow. Okay. I'm going to get on the flip side of that, we have mindless eating. So sit in front of a TV eating, scrolling social media while you're eating.
So bad.
Driving and eating.
Oh my gosh.
Horrible habits.
So bad.
Horrible habits. And like, and believe me, I think all of us have been guilty of this. I for one, I know I have. And I will tell you, when we try to not eat and drive for that reason, because when you are eating and driving, you are not mindful of what and how much and enjoying your food at all. You are just eating to eat. And,
right. It's like, I need to put fuel in. And, I'll do that sometimes. I'll have an RX bar in my car and I'll realize, like, oh my God, I haven't eaten in 5 hours. I need to put some protein in. Right. And I'm non-dairy. So I have to really narrow in what kind of protein bars I can eat. And I'll do that sometime when I'm driving because I'm human. I mean, you're not going to be like this Buddha person every day because you're human, right? But as many times as you can drop into mindfulness during your day, you'll be healthier.
Yeah, for sure. That makes total sense. That was a great explanation on mindful eating. So thank you so much for that, Julie.
Sure.
Janet, what other comments or questions do you have for Julie?
Well, I think one of the things that's super important for people to understand is what stress does to you if you don't address it. Will you talk to that for people? Because sometimes people don't even realize what toll it's taking on them.
Yeah, well, it makes you sick. So the short answer is it makes you sick. And the long answer is it can make you sick in all kinds of ways. It can make you sick in every part of your body. If you are constantly stressed, meaning you've got cortisol and adrenaline that does not shut off, you do not go down to tend and befriend, you don't have your reset, your entire body, your circulatory system, your cardiovascular system, your organs, you can get sick anywhere. So you don't want to do that. You know that oxygen mask thing that it's so cliche, put your oxygen mask on first, or you can't pour from an empty cup. I mean, I teach caregivers, and I've been a caregiver. Both my parents have passed away, and I was the caregiver for each of them separately, and it's exhausting work. You have to take care of yourself or you can get sick. And then if you're sick, you're no help to anybody.
Right.
You need somebody to help you. And that's not to say that people should feel like they got sick and it's their own fault. So I don't want to say that. I don't want to shame. I don't want any of that shame business to come into this conversation. But just to know that you know your body and you need to do things to eat well, to get as much sleep as you can. I'm not a good sleeper, so I have all different techniques for sleep, to move your body as best as you can, to get outside in nature, all the things that you guys already know and that everybody knows is common sense. But when you get in a stress mode with whatever, whether it's work or whether it's caregiving or parenting, you forget to do these things. And so you almost like need to remember.
So tell us, when it comes to parenting, I know mothers with young children have this issue a lot. What are your words of wisdom for mothers with young children, how they have to take care of themselves?
So I used to do guided meditations in the pickup line in my car. When I was waiting to pick the kids up from school, I would put the car in park and I would play a guided meditation because the car, you can hear my Midwest car, the car really supports your body. You're in that, you're in the driver's seat and you can have your head back and your back supported and your hips are supported and your feet can be on the ground. And if you get there early enough to do a 12-minute guided meditation, by the time the kids get in the car, you're a different mom. You're really everything, the racing around that you did in the morning is gone. And you're not yet, what do I need to pick up or make for dinner or whatever? It was a daily practice of mine. I also tried to give myself little timeouts so that I could recenter myself because I have a singleton and then I have a set of twins. So I could have been, that's how I got into all this was stress. My parents were aging and I had these 3 preteens and it was not easy. I was not managing.
I think I remember saying this to my kids when they were really small. Mom needs a timeout. So that meant,
For sure.
just be quiet, let her go for a second and then come back. because, sometimes it's like, you're overreacting to something just because of what's on your plate and
Yep.
it. And so they'd always like, she's got a timeout,
Oh,
but it was maybe a good lesson too, because I would just say, mom needs a timeout right now and step away for a moment. I mean, it didn't harm anybody, but it gave them also the example that I'm recognizing this and I
yeah,
need to just have a second, and
it's good
it worked.
modeling.
Yeah,
It
it was good for them and me.
Yep.
Maybe it wasn't as fast as I should say it sometimes. I'll just say that. Um, but I think those things are very healthy for even as, you know, if you're managing people, if you're just, I've said a few times, this is not the time at the moment. I need to step aside and then come back and address something, because I just knew I was not in a place where if I opened my mouth, it was not going to be good for me or that person.
Yeah.
So, you start teaching yourself where you need to put the brake, walk away. And my husband has a great friend that shared with us. Sometimes you need to respond to something. Sometimes you need to have maybe a 48-hour rule, 24-hour rule, or whatever before you go forward with, because it takes away the emotion from the decision process or reacting.
Right. So you guys know this because you're both in the medical field, but your amygdala is the most primitive part of your brain, the oldest part of your brain. And Dan Siegel has this great fist. He puts his fist up and he explains it that way. And that's your amygdala, the thumb folded in. And then the prefrontal cortex, which is the part of your brain behind your forehead that enables you to make a more skillful response, takes a little while to come online. So you feel angry, you feel whatever it is, rage, whatever, somebody just cut you off in traffic. You're actually hijacked. The prefrontal cortex is hijacked by your amygdala. So you do need that cooling off period, right? So you must have it, Janet. You must just be wired that way to know that, to like clamp your mouth shut so that you can get your prefrontal cortex online. I devised S.N.A.P to help people do that. So they've got to do these steps. And by the time they've done them, their prefrontal cortex is good and online, and they can make a more skillful response.
A more rational decision. That our medulla is like our reptilian brain, and it's basically for self-preservation, fight or flight, live or
Yeah.
die. But most of the times now with our society, it really is not that much of an emergency as we
Right.
might think it is. So once our big brain takes over, then you can make more of a rational thought.
Right. A more skillful response. That's what you want. You want your prefrontal cortex to help you out so that you don't blurt out something that you have to apologize for later.
Exactly. So Julie, as we wrap this podcast up, tell us what you have a passion for.
Poetry.
Oh, wow. Cool. Tell me more about that.
I have my debut poetry collection coming out March 3rd. They're mindfulness poems. And I'll be 65 the week before this book comes out. And it just shows you that you can reinvent yourself or open new chapters at any age. So I started writing poetry during the pandemic because I read poetry at the end of podcast, guided meditations. And I started writing them and they started getting published. And I'm like, oh, I could do this. This is fun. And so that's one of my joy practices is writing poetry.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. Now, the QR code for our listeners and viewers up there, I guess for our viewers up there, the QR code goes directly to Julie's website. We are streaming your website now. Tell us if anybody has any questions, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
They can just email me at julie@mindfulmethodsforlife.com. And also when they're on the website, there's a link to the podcast. The podcast is only guided meditations. There's hundreds of them on there, each with a poem. And so I recommend people try meditating every day. Just put in earbuds and follow my voice. It's free.
I love it. Absolutely love it. So, Julie, you've helped us realize our goal, which is to educate and empower individuals to take charge of their own health. So, thank you so much for helping us realize that.
Thanks for having me on your show.
And listeners and viewers, thank you for tuning in to Health Solutions with Shawn and Janet Needham. Tune in Friday this week to our midweek podcast. I guess the end of the week podcast it will be, because we will be in Florida traveling. We're going to be streaming early in the morning, 7 a.m. Eastern Standard Time this Friday. So don't miss out. Thank you for tuning in to Health Solutions with Shawn and Janet Needham.